The alarm screamed across the mining station as Commander Talvira watched the nightmare unfold on her screens. The Vorthak swarm had found them. Those twisted bioships dropped out of hyperspace like a plague of locusts, their organic hulls. Pulsing with sick green light, she'd heard the stories from other colonies. The lucky ones got to evacuate before the swarm arrived. The unlucky ones became food. Kepler 442b wasn't supposed to be a target. It was just a simple mining world on the outer rim, far from anything important. But that's exactly why 50,000 refugees had ended up here. Families from the Altarian worlds, traders from the Centauri colonies, even some of the proud ethereal collective members who'd lost everything when their homeworlds burned. They'd all come here thinking they'd be safe in the middle of nowhere. Talvira slammed her fist on the communications console. This is Kepler 442b Colony Command to all Galactic Defense Forces. We have 50,000 civilians under immediate threat. The Vorthak swarm is beginning their attack pattern. We need immediate assistance. The first response came from the Altarian Republic. Colony Command, this is Admiral Zexthon of the 4th Fleet. We're tracking the swarm's movement. Unfortunately, we cannot commit forces to your location. Strategic priorities require us to defend core worlds. Her heart sank. The Altarians had 3 battle cruisers within 2 jumps of their system, but they wouldn't risk them for a mining colony full of refugees. The Centaurian Federation was next. Kepler Colony, we sympathize with your situation. However, our fleet assets are currently engaged in defending trade routes. We cannot spare resources for rescue operations. Even the mighty ethereal collective, whose technology could probably stop the swarm single-handedly, sent the same cold message. Colony Command, the Collective Council has determined that defensive positions closer to our territory take priority. We suggest immediate evacuation of essential personnel. Essential personnel. As if the families huddled in the shelters below weren't essential. As if the children didn't matter because they lived on a forgotten rock at the edge of space. Through her viewport, Talvira could see the first bioships entering the atmosphere. They looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh, their wings dripping with acid that would melt through the colony's shields. The defensive turrets fired desperately, but their energy beams barely scratched the organic armor. In the shelters, mothers held their children tight while fathers checked their weapons one last time. The colony's small security force was brave, but they had maybe 100 defenders against thousands of swarm creatures. Everyone knew how this would end, the same way it had ended for dozens of other colonies. In screams and silence, the communication channels filled with static as the swarm's bioweapons interfered with their equipment. Soon, even their calls for help would be cut off. Talvira stared at the tactical display showing red contacts surrounding their world. 50,000 people were about to die, and the galaxy's great civilizations couldn't spare a single ship to help them. She was wrong about one thing, though. Someone was listening. Commander Talvira felt a spark of hope when the Centaurian fleet's signature appeared on her sensors. 3 heavy cruisers and a carrier group, dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Finally, someone had come to help. She opened communications immediately. Centaurian fleet, this is Colony Command. Thank the stars you're here. We have civilians under direct attack. The swarm has already begun landing operations. Admiral Kexvar's face appeared on screen, his blue-scaled features tight with concern. Colony Command, we're reading massive bioship concentrations around your world. This is much larger than our intelligence suggested. Talvira's hope began to waver. She could see it in the Admiral's eyes before he even spoke the words. I'm sorry, Colony Command. The enemy presence is overwhelming. We cannot risk 4 capital ships against this force. We are pulling back to defensive positions. Wait, Talvira shouted, but the transmission cut. On her tactical display, she watched in horror as the Centaurian ships turned around and jumped back into hyperspace. They'd been in the system for less than 10 minutes. The bridge fell silent except for the distant rumble of explosions as swarm drop pods crashed into the colony's outer settlements. Her communications officer, a young Altarian named Veltar, looked up with tears in his compound eyes. Commander, we're receiving a priority message from the Ethereal Collective. They say their reinforcement fleet has been redirected. Talvira didn't need to hear the rest. The collective had promised a full battle squadron yesterday. Now they were probably defending some core world worth 1,000 times more than this forgotten mining colony. But the worst betrayal came from an unexpected source. The holographic image of Director Zalmoth appeared in the command center, his expensive robes perfectly pressed despite the chaos consuming his mining operation. "Commander Talvira, I'm ordering immediate evacuation of all Altarian Mining Consortium personnel. The company shuttles are standing by to extract essential staff." "What about the civilians?" Talvira demanded. "What about the families in the shelters? The consortium's responsibility is to its employees and shareholders. We cannot risk corporate assets for non-essential personnel. Non-essential personnel. 50,000 people reduced to a line item in a corporate budget." The orbital bombardment began just as Zalmoth's transmission ended. The swarm's bioships hung in space like diseased moons, launching streams of acid and living projectiles at the colony below. The defensive shields held for now, but Talvira could see the power readings dropping with each impact. In the civilian quarters, families pressed against sealed windows, watching green fire rain from the sky. The colony's small security force set up barricades in the main corridors, checking their weapons one final time. Everyone knew their outdated pulse rifles wouldn't do much against swarm warriors, but they'd fight anyway. Talvira stood alone, on her command bridge, watching the tactical display as red contacts multiplied around their world. No help was coming. The great galactic civilizations had written them off as acceptable losses. The mining company saw them as liability. As the first shield generator exploded in a shower of sparks, she made a final broadcast on all emergency frequencies. Not a call for help this time, but a message for whoever might find the colony's black box recorder. "This is Commander Talvira of Kepler 442b. If anyone receives this, know that we fought. Know that 50,000 innocent people died here because no one thought they were worth saving." The main shield generator exploded in a brilliant flash, sending chunks of metal crashing into the colony's central plaza. Commander Talvira gripped her command chair as the station shook like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Emergency. Lights bathed everything in blood-red shadows, while sparks rained from damaged control panels. "Shield strength at 12% and falling," reported her tactical officer. "The swarm is concentrating fire on the remaining generators. We have maybe 10 minutes before total collapse." Through the reinforced windows of the command center, Talvira could see families running through the streets below, carrying children, and whatever belongings they could grab. Some headed for the underground shelters, but everyone knew those concrete tunnels would become tombs once the swarm creatures landed. "What about the evacuation pods?" she asked desperately. 17. Launched successfully. The rest were picked off by swarm interceptors before they cleared the atmosphere. Her communications officer's voice cracked. "No survivors detected." Talvira closed her eyes. Those pods had carried mostly children and elderly civilians. The lucky ones died quickly when the biofighters caught them. The unlucky ones would be taken alive for the swarm's feeding pits. The tactical display showed more bad news. Swarm dropships were breaking through the atmosphere, their organic hulls glowing red-hot as they descended toward the colony's outskirts. Each one carried hundreds of warrior forms, creatures bred for killing and designed to feel no mercy. "Commander, we're detecting a new hyperspace signature," the sensor operator called out. "Large contact, unknown configuration." Talvira's hearts skipped. Maybe the Centaurians had changed their minds. Maybe the ethereal collective had sent help after all. But the ship that dropped out of hyperspace wasn't like anything in the galactic databases. It was massive, easily twice the size of a Centaurian heavy cruiser, but built like a flying brick. Where other starships had elegant curves and exotic materials, this vessel looked like someone had welded armor plates over a fusion reactor and called it a day. "What is that thing?" Veltar whispered. The ship's hull was scarred and patched in dozens of places, painted in dull gray with strange markings along its sides. As it moved closer, Talvira could make out symbols that looked almost primitive compared to the flowing scripts of advanced civilizations. I'm reading massive energy signatures, the tactical officer reported. But the technology, it's all wrong. Fusion drives instead of antimatter, kinetic weapons instead of particle beams. Whoever built this thing is using technology that's centuries behind galactic standards. The mystery ship moved with surprising grace for something so crude-looking. It positioned itself between the colony and the largest swarm bioship, completely ignoring the fact that it was outnumbered 50-1. Then the communications array crackled to life with a transmission that made Talvira's breath catch. Kepler 442b, Colony Command. This is Captain Jiwoo of the United Earth Navy vessel Defiance. We received your distress call and are moving to assist. Please maintain your current position and hang tight. The voice was calm, professional, and utterly confident, despite the impossible odds. But what shocked Talvira most was the species identification. Human. She'd heard of them, of course. A young race from the inner systems, barely past their first interstellar wars. Most galactic powers considered them primitives playing with fire. Captain Jiwoo, Talvira transmitted back. You're facing a full swarm assault force. This is a suicide mission. Your single ship cannot... Ma'am, with respect, we didn't come this far to turn around now. Besides, we're not alone. As if summoned by his words, more ships began dropping out of hyperspace. Human ships, all of them, built with the same crude efficiency as the Defiance. They formed up in a battle formation that looked suspiciously like something from the ancient wars. Captain Jiwoo's voice filled the command center again. All civilians, prepare for immediate combat operations in your area. The cavalry has arrived. The first human ship opened fire, and Talvira had never seen anything like it. Instead of the elegant energy beams used by advanced civilizations, the Defiance launched what looked like simple metal slugs. But these weren't simple at all. They screamed through space at incredible speeds, hitting the nearest swarm bioship with the force of a meteor strike. The organic vessel, which had shrugged off Centaurian plasma cannons just hours earlier, split apart like a rotten fruit. Chunks of biomatter and acid sprayed in all directions as the railgun rounds punched completely through its hull. By the void, whispered Veltar. How are they doing that? Before anyone could answer, the human ship fired again. This time, missile tubes along its hull opened up like the mouth of some ancient beast. Nuclear warheads streaked toward the swarm formation, their primitive fusion drives leaving bright trails across the darkness. Nuclear weapons? Talvira's tactical officer sounded shocked. Who still uses nuclear weapons in space combat? The answer came when the missiles found their targets. White-hot fireballs erupted across the swarm fleet, and bioships that had survived dozens of energy weapon hits simply disintegrated under the raw, brutal force of atomic fire. But the real surprise came when more human ships dropped out of hyperspace. Not just one or two, but dozens. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, and massive vessels that could only be battleships, all of them built with the same crude, practical design as the Defiance. This is impossible, the sensor operator stammered. Intelligence. Reports said humans barely had a dozen interstellar vessels. Where did all these ships come from? The human battle group spread out in a formation that looked ancient but effective. They didn't use the complex three-dimensional tactics favored by modern navies. Instead, they formed a simple wall of steel and firepower, then began systematically, destroying everything in their path. Captain Jiwoo's voice came over the communications again. Colony Command, this is Defiance. We're engaging the main swarm force. Please keep your people in the shelters until we've cleared the orbital zone. Captain, there are over 60 bioships out there. How do you plan to... Her question was answered by another massive barrage. Every human ship fired at once, filling space with railgun slugs, missiles, and weapons that the galaxy had forgotten how to build. The swarm bioships, designed to absorb and adapt to energy. Weapons had no defense against simple kinetic force and nuclear fire. A swarm hive ship, larger than 3 human cruisers combined, tried to ram the nearest human vessel. The human captain didn't even try to dodge. Instead, he fired everything he had directly into the bioship's mouth. The creature exploded from the inside out, its death scream echoing across all frequencies. Sirwan, target the dropships heading for the surface, Jiwoo ordered one of his captains. We can't let them reach the civilians. The human destroyer Sirwan broke formation and dove toward the planet, its guns blazing. The swarm dropships were fast and maneuverable, but they'd never faced an enemy that fought like humans did. Instead of elegant dueling, the destroyer simply rammed through their formation, firing in all directions. These humans fight like barbarians, Veltar observed, but there was admiration in his voice. No fancy tactics, no complex strategies, just pure violence and determination. Talvira watched the battle unfold with growing amazement. The galactic powers had written off humanity as primitive. They dismissed human technology as crude and outdated. But sometimes crude and simple worked better than elegant and complex. The swarm was learning that lesson the hard way. Captain Jiwoo's face appeared on the main screen, and Talvira was surprised by how young he looked. Most fleet commanders in the galaxy were ancient beings with centuries of experience. This human couldn't be more than 40 cycles old, yet he commanded a battle group like a veteran. Commander Talvira, we're establishing orbital control, but we need to talk about ground operations. My sensors show swarm creatures already landed in your outer settlements. Captain, our security forces are brave, but we only have 100 defenders. The swarm has thousands of warrior forms down there. Even with your ships providing support, ma'am, that's where you're wrong. Jiwoo's smile was grim but confident. Other species might rely on superior technology to win battles. Humans learned a long time ago that wars are won by soldiers who refuse to quit. On the tactical display, Talvira watched as human dropships launched from the fleet. These weren't sleek assault craft like the ethereal collective used. They looked more like flying metal boxes, designed to take punishment and keep flying. You see, Commander, every other race in the galaxy developed faster-than-light travel before they had major wars. They never learned how to fight when the odds were impossible. Humans spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other with sticks and stones before we reached the stars. The first human dropship crashed into the colony's main plaza, its armored hull smoking from swarm bioweapon hits. The rear ramp dropped, and armored figures poured out. Their power armor looked crude compared to Altarian combat suits, but it was thick, practical, and covered in weapon mounts. This is Captain Do-hyun of the 7th Marine Assault Battalion. A new voice cut into the communications. We're establishing a perimeter around the civilian shelters. Any colonists who can carry a rifle, we need you now. Talvira had never heard anything like it. Galactic military doctrine called for evacuation of civilians from combat zones. Humans apparently preferred to arm them and put them in the fight. Captain Do-hyun, most of our people aren't soldiers. They're miners, traders, families. Ma'am, with respect, anyone can pull a trigger when their children are in danger. We're not asking them to be heroes. We're just asking them to stand up. Through the security cameras, Talvira watched human marines moving through the colony streets. When they found a family hiding in a damaged building, they didn't evacuate them to a safe zone. Instead, they reinforced the building and turned it into a fortress. Every building becomes a strong point, Do-hyun explained as his troops worked. Every civilian becomes a defender. Every street becomes a killing ground. The swarm might have numbers, but we have something better. What's that? Talvira asked. We have a reason to fight that goes deeper than instinct or programming. When humans say no one left behind, we mean it. Every person in this colony matters. Every life is worth protecting. More human ships arrived, and Talvira realized this wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a statement. While the galaxy's great powers had written off Kepler 442b as expendable, humanity had mobilized an entire fleet. So 1. Establish air support patterns over the residential sectors, Jiwoo ordered. Min Su, your battalion takes the industrial complex. I want overlapping fields of fire covering every approach. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, but there was something else in their actions. A determination that went beyond military training. When a swarm warrior form broke through their lines, human soldiers didn't fall back to regroup. They threw themselves at the creature with knives and grenades. Captain Jiwoo, Talvira said quietly, why are you doing this? Your people barely know us. We're just refugees on a mining world. The human captain's expression grew serious. Commander, where we come from, that's exactly the kind of people worth dying for. Sergeant Hyojin crouched behind a makeshift barricade, watching green acid eat through the metal walls around her. The swarm warrior forms were everything the horror stories claimed. 8 feet tall, covered in chitinous armor, with claws that could slice through steel like paper. But what made them truly terrifying were the biological weapons they carried. "Contact front," shouted Private Dongwu as a group of swarm creatures rounded the corner. They immediately began spraying acid from organic launchers grafted to their arms. The corrosive liquid hissed and bubbled as it ate through anything it touched. Other alien militaries had retreated when faced with these weapons. The acid dissolved their energy shields and melted their high-tech armor. But human equipment was different. Instead of elegant force fields, they relied on layers of ceramic and steel that could be replaced when damaged. "Switch to kinetic rounds," Hyojin ordered. "Aim for center mass." Her squad's assault rifles barked in unison, sending streams of depleted uranium bullets into the attacking creatures. The swarm warriors staggered, but kept coming, their natural armor absorbing most of the impact. "They're adapting to our weapons," Dongwu called out, "just like the report said." "Then we adapt faster," Yejin replied. She pulled a grenade from her belt, but not the high-tech plasma charges other militaries used. This was old-school chemical explosive, the kind humans had been making for centuries. "Frag out!" The explosion sent shrapnel in all directions, and the swarm creatures screamed as metal fragments found gaps in their armor. Unlike energy weapons, there was no way to adapt to simple pieces of steel moving at high velocity. Behind them, colonist families huddled in the reinforced shelter. Talnara, a young Altarian mother, clutched her children as acid ate through the outer walls. She'd watched in amazement as the human soldiers had turned her apartment building into a fortress, welding metal plates over windows and setting up ammunition stockpiles in the hallways. "Sergeant, we're getting flanked from the east corridor," reported Corporal Young-ho over the radio. "Copy that. Ginny, take your fire team and plug that hole. Remember, these things hunt by pheromone trails. Use the masking spray." The humans had studied swarm tactics obsessively, where other species had relied on superior technology to win. Battles, humanity had learned to think like their enemies. They used chemical masking agents to confuse the creatures' senses and set traps in choke points. But what impressed the colonists most was how the humans fought as a team. When Young-ho's position was overrun, Hyejin didn't abandon him. Instead, she led a counterattack that cost her 3 soldiers but saved the corporal's life. "Why do they keep fighting?" whispered Veltar, the Altarian communications officer. "They barely know us. We're not even the same species." His answer came when a swarm acid spitter broke through the perimeter and charged toward the civilian shelter. Hyojin threw herself between the creature and the refugees, taking a spray of acid across her armor. The corrosive liquid ate through her chest plate, but she kept firing until the creature fell. "Because that's what humans do," said Dr. Keth Allen, an elderly ethereal who'd been studying human culture. "They don't calculate odds or weigh strategic value. When innocent people are in danger, they fight." The sound of human reinforcements echoed through the corridors as Captain Do-hyun's main force pushed deeper into the colony. But it wasn't just human voices anymore. Colonists had picked up weapons and joined the fight, inspired by the soldiers who'd refused to abandon them. "This is unbelievable," Talavera observed from the command center. "Our people are actually pushing the swarm back. The creatures that destroyed entire star systems are retreating from a mining colony." The difference wasn't in technology or numbers, it was in spirit. The humans had shown the colonists that defeat wasn't inevitable, that sometimes the only thing standing between civilization and darkness was the willingness to fight. The swarm had conquered dozens of worlds using the same strategy: overwhelm the defenders with superior numbers, adapt to their weapons, and watch them break under pressure. But something was going wrong on Kepler 442b. The longer the battle lasted, the more dangerous the humans became. Commander Minho's voice crackled over the communications as his reinforcement fleet dropped out of hyperspace. "This is the second Human Expeditionary Force. We're reading active combat operations planetside. All units prepare for immediate deployment." Talavera stared at her tactical display in disbelief. More human ships were arriving, dozens of them, heavy cruisers, assault carriers, and massive supply vessels that spoke of months of careful planning. "Captain Jiwoo, how many ships did humanity send?" she asked. "Ma'am, When we detected the swarm's movement patterns 6 months ago, we began the largest military mobilization in human history. Every shipyard, every factory, every able-bodied person who could hold a wrench started building this fleet. 6 months. While the galactic powers had ignored the growing swarm threat, humanity had been preparing for war. Not to defend their own worlds, but to save strangers they'd never met. On the ground, the tide was turning in ways that defied everything the galaxy knew about swarm tactics. Lieutenant Subin coordinated her hunter-killer teams through the colony's maintenance tunnels, using the creature's own biosignatures against them. Team Alpha, I've got a cluster of warrior forms in Section 7. They're setting up a breeding pit. Copy that, Subin. We're moving to intercept. The humans had studied captured swarm specimens obsessively. They knew the creatures couldn't reproduce without establishing organic nodes throughout captured territory. Other militaries had tried to destroy these installations with precision strikes. Humans preferred a more direct approach. Charges set. Everyone clear the area. The explosion collapsed 3 city blocks, taking the swarm breeding facility with it. The humans didn't care about collateral damage to buildings. They cared about stopping the enemy from turning their colony into a hive. In orbit, the swarm bioships found themselves facing an enemy that fought unlike anything in their genetic memory. The creatures had evolved to counter energy weapons and exotic matter drives. They had no adaptations for crude kinetic weapons and nuclear fire. Target the command ship, Minho ordered from his flagship. All batteries concentrated fire. The massive swarm hive ship tried to regenerate its wounds as human weapons tore into its hull. Biomatter-sealed breaches and organic armor grew back over damaged sections. But the humans just kept shooting. Railgun slugs punched through the creature's attempts to heal faster than it could adapt. "Sir, the bioship is trying to disengage," reported the tactical officer. "Don't let it. If that thing escapes, it'll carry everything it learned about our tactics to the next battle." Human destroyers moved to intercept, their captains showing the same ruthless determination as their ground forces. They rammed the damaged bioship, detonating their own reactors in nuclear fireballs that consumed both vessels. The swarm had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice themselves to ensure victory. Their hive mind couldn't comprehend the concept of individual choice overriding survival instinct. Multiple bioships breaking off from the main force, Subin reported from the surface. "Looks like they're trying to retreat." "Negative," Ji-Woo responded. "We don't let them leave. Every creature that escapes means another colony dies tomorrow." The human fleet spread out in a hunting formation, pursuing the fleeing swarm vessels with relentless efficiency. They'd learned from studying previous swarm attacks that the creatures always left survivors to carry intelligence back to the hive. "Not this time." "This is incredible," Talvira whispered. "They're not just defeating the swarm, they're annihilating them." The battle that should have ended in humanity's destruction was becoming a rout. The primitives that galactic civilization had dismissed were systematically dismantling an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. The last swarm bioship limped away into hyperspace, trailing organic debris and leaking acid into the void. Its hull bore the scars of human weapons, massive holes that even the creature's regenerative abilities couldn't heal fast enough. The mighty swarm, terror of the galaxy, was running for its life. Commander Talvira stood in her damaged command center, watching the tactical display as human ships formed protective formations around the colony. The nightmare was over. But she couldn't quite believe it. In 6 hours, humanity had accomplished what the galaxy's greatest military powers had declared impossible. "Colony Command, this is Captain Ji-Woo. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We're beginning search and rescue operations for any survivors in the outer settlements." "Captain, I don't know how to thank you. My people were ready to die. Everyone had abandoned us." Ji-Woo's image appeared on the main screen, his face grim. "Commander, that's exactly why we came. May I come aboard? There are some things we need to discuss." An hour later, Ji-Woo sat across from Talvira in her private office, a cup of Altarian tea growing cold between them. The human captain looked tired, but his eyes held a determination that made her believe he could take on the entire galaxy, if necessary. "You want to know how we knew to come here," Ji-Woo said. It wasn't a question. The thought had crossed my mind. Human space is 50 light-years from here. You arrived with a full battle group just hours after we sent our first distress call. Jiwoo leaned back in his chair. Commander, humanity has been monitoring galactic communications for the past year. Every distress call, every plea for help, every time a colony was abandoned to the swarm, Talvira felt her heart sink. You've been watching us fail. We've been watching the galaxy's great civilizations reveal their true nature. The Centaurian Federation protects trade routes, but abandons refugee colonies. The Ethereal Collective saves their own people, but lets others die. The Altarian Republic talks about honor while running from every real fight. The truth stung because it was accurate. Talvira had served in the Altarian military for 30 years, and she'd seen the gradual retreat from idealism to pure self-interest. So we started building, Jiwoo continued. Every shipyard in human space went to maximum production. We called up reserves, mobilized civilian industries, and began the largest military expansion in our history. But why? These aren't human colonies being attacked. Jiwoo's expression softened slightly. Commander, where I come from, there's an old saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We watched the swarm consume world after world, while advanced civilizations calculated whether it was worth the cost to intervene. And you decided it was. We decided that if the galaxy's great powers wouldn't protect innocent people, then humanity would have to step up. Through the office windows, Talvira could see human marines helping colonists rebuild damaged sections of the settlement. They worked alongside Altarians, Centaurians, and members of a dozen other species, treating everyone as equals. This isn't just about defeating the swarm, is it? She realized. No, it's not. We're building something new, Commander. An alliance based on mutual protection rather than political convenience. A commitment to defend those who cannot defend themselves. The other powers won't like that. You're threatening their entire way of doing business, Jiwoo smiled grimly. Let them complain. They had their chance to do the right thing. Now it's humanity's turn to show the galaxy what real civilization looks like. Outside, more human ships were arriving. Not warships this time, but hospital ships, supply vessels, and colony support craft. Humanity wasn't just here to fight. They were here to rebuild. What do you need from us? Talvira asked. Just your trust, Commander, and maybe help spreading the word that there's finally someone in this galaxy who keeps their promises. 3 weeks after the battle, Kepler 442b looked like a completely different world. Where once there had been smoking ruins and acid-scarred buildings, human engineering teams worked alongside colonists to rebuild everything stronger than before. The colony's new defensive grid could probably hold off a fleet twice the size of the original swarm force. Commander Talvira stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed orbital station, watching sleek diplomatic vessels arrive from across the galaxy. The same powers that had refused to spare a single ship during the crisis were now sending full delegations with offers of alliance and aid. Quite a turnout, Captain Jiwoo observed, joining her at the viewport. The Centaurian ambassador arrived. This morning with a convoy of supply ships. Funny how generous they become after the shooting stops. What did you tell them? The same thing I told the ethereal delegation yesterday. We appreciate their concern, but their help is about 3 weeks too late. The first to arrive had been Admiral Kexvar himself, the same Centaurian who'd retreated at the first sign of overwhelming odds. He'd brought gifts, trade agreements, and flowery speeches about cooperation. The colonists had listened politely, then asked him where he'd been when their children were dying. The Altarian Republic is offering to station a permanent fleet here, Talvira mentioned. Full military protection under their defense umbrella. Jiwoo's laugh was bitter. Right, the same protection they offered when the swarm was actually here. Through the viewport they could see the newest arrival, a massive ethereal collective mothership, its crystalline hull gleaming with exotic energies. The most advanced civilization in known space had finally decided Kepler 442b was worth their attention. You know what the really sad part is? Talvira said. Any one of those fleets could have stopped the swarm easily. The ethereal ship alone has enough firepower to glass a planet. but that would have required them to risk something for people who couldn't offer anything in return. Down on the colony's surface, families were returning to their rebuilt homes. Human medics worked in the hospitals alongside local doctors, treating injuries with equipment that was simple but effective. Human teachers helped reopen the schools, sharing lessons about courage and standing up for what's right. The transformation wasn't just physical. The colonists walked taller now, spoke with more confidence. They'd seen what real allies looked like, and they weren't impressed by empty promises from powers that had abandoned them. "Commander Talvira to Colony Communications," she said into her communicator. "Please prepare for galaxy-wide broadcast." Minutes later, she stood before the cameras that would carry her words across known space. Behind her, the rebuilt colony stretched toward the horizon, a testament to what could be accomplished when people refused to give up on each other. "This is Commander Talvira of Kepler 442b, speaking to all worlds, all peoples, all civilizations that may hear this message. 3 weeks ago, my colony faced extinction. 50,000 innocent people were about to die, and we called for help." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "The great powers of the galaxy calculated the cost and found us wanting. The mighty fleets that could have saved us decided we weren't worth the risk. But someone else was listening. Humanity heard our call and answered it, not with calculations or conditions, but with everything they had. When everyone else abandoned us, when the great powers turned away, the humans came. Not for profit, not for territory, not for strategic advantage, but because it was right. That is the difference between civilization and mere technology. The message spread across the galaxy within hours, carried by the same communication networks that had ignored their pleas for help. And with it came something that hadn't existed in decades, hope that maybe, just maybe, the universe still had heroes in it.